What's going on, homies? It is Trevor. Now, the long-awaited 4.0 patch for Battlefield 2042 dropped this morning, and being the dedicated channel that I am, I decided that I wanted to get my hands on the patch the moment that it dropped so that I could test everything out and get it back to you guys. So what did I do? I set an alarm on my phone, woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, downloaded the update from the god-awful Origin launcher, ran the game through Steam, and I got to work. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Immediately, I decided to acquaint myself with the reworked menu options, more specifically, the HUD customization, to change the scaling and opacity of all of my objective icons, as well as the player icons, as well as my player UI. And I gotta say, just being able to experience that filled my body with enough dopamine to out-hug a hippie, and I hopped into my first match. Now, I wasn't really sure which topic I wanted to address first, as far as the changes in Update 4.0. But immediately, as I am natured to do in this game, I wanted to look at the negative. And knowing that they specified absolutely nothing about fixing input on controller and mouse and keyboard, as well as the aim assist, I decided I would check that first. So what did I do? I made sure that my settings haven't changed, turned aim assist and aim zoom snap all the way to 100%. Trust me guys, I don't plan on leaving it that way. And I immediately jump into breakthrough. 128 players. Let's see how bad the servers are. First game. Now, if it seems like I'm glossing over some of these points, it's because I want to have the first half of this video be dedicated to the good. Now, the first thing I noticed once I finally dropped into the map is that my frames were not sub 100 FPS, which is rare because usually in 128 player modes, I'm probably capping out at around 80, with the low end actually being sub 60. And surprisingly, I was almost able to consistently keep about 100 frames per second. So it seems like whatever optimization they did do to the game maybe didn't make it less CPU bound, but it definitely helped it to not take such a toll on my CPU, which is a 5600X, a pretty decent CPU anyways. Now, going back to the aim assist and how they didn't mention it, I didn't want my mind to betray me and think something was there that wasn't. So I pulled out my K30, an SMG that should be relatively close range and okay at mid-range, and I set my sights specifically on somebody over 50 meters away. And then this happened. Now, since both of my settings were set to 100, I was expecting a gross amount of resistance when it comes to the bubble surrounding the enemy character. And I'm absolutely baffled to tell you that the aim assist, even maxed out at 100%, where I was getting the most resistance, worked like a charm. Why was this not in the patch notes? Because that tells me one of two things. It was a bug that they didn't want to address, was messed up, and they just fixed it without letting us know, or the game was so badly optimized that your input, as well as the hit registration, was actively fighting against your aim assist. Now, I can't tell you anything about it definitively, but in the biggest turn of events, it seems like aim assist is actually fixed. I noticed whenever an enemy ranger was running by, that my character would rotate their aim towards them, as if now the aim assist has a sort of rotation for tracking. And even using an SMG with a high fire rate like the K30, I was able to have long distance gunfights with people using SVKs, SWSs, and other guns, and coming out on top a lot of the time. In my very first game on, playing Manifest, I went 126 and 18, which is the highest I've gotten in this game since launch. So that means my two biggest concerns that were nowhere in the patch notes. I'm surprised to say that it seems like the input, at least on controller, and the aim assist are now working, either by it being fixed or the game being more optimized for it and not fighting against it. But either way, I didn't have a single instance in-game where I could blame a death during a gunfight being on the game working against me. And that is truly something I did not expect in this update. Now, moving on to the general bug fixes in the game, as well as the specialist tweaks. Now, don't get it confused, they didn't rework the specialist or introduce classes or anything like that. All they did was buff and nerf, or pretty much do nothing, to certain specialists to try to make them either more or less favorable, to kind of balance out how many of each specialist are out on the battlefield. Now, I didn't get a chance to test out Rao because honestly, once you get stuck to a specialist, that's kind of the one that you stick with. And usually you don't go past 2. So I chose my 2 specialists and decided to go full rage mode, no matter the map, no matter the distance, and just try to see if I could get the most out of their changes. And with the fixed hit reg and seemingly the fixed aim assist and input on controller at least, McKay's special trait with the faster strafing and movement speed, I found myself being insanely hard to hit in a lot of gun battles, especially if you've gotten yourself accustomed to 2-stick aiming. And there seems to be a much better hitbox with McKay's grapple hook. So if you were a fan of McKay and you got used to his mechanics and you're coming back to try this out, stick with McKay, you're gonna do just fine. Now, moving on to my personal favorite specialist, and that's Sundance. Now, I know the quote-unquote Sundance community was a little pissed off that they were going to make it easier for you to hear Sundance, but Sundance is a really good specialist. But I'm sorry to tell all you chumps, just as much as they nerfed on Sundance, they buffed. Prior to update 4.0, if you were flying a certain way and disabled your wingsuit and turned around and then re-enabled your wingsuit, you would still be stuck going in the exact same direction. Well, that changes. So now, if you're flying towards a group of enemies and they start shooting at you, you can disable your wingsuit, turn to the side, turn down, or turn straight around. And as soon as you enable that wingsuit, you will now go in the new direction that you're facing, which means getting out of crossfire while in the air has never been easier, and I am so grateful for that. But my big concern was the lack of use for her grenade belt. And immediately, like I always do, I accidentally double click whenever I take her grenade belt out, and it put me on the damn anti-vehicle mine. I threw it, and it immediately had the PTSD moment of knowing that my anti-vehicle grenade was going to be raptured up to heaven to be with Jesus. And to my surprise, not only did it not even go into the air, but it immediately shot towards a bolt about 30 meters away, completely behind cover that I couldn't see, which means that you may actually have a chance to use these anti-vehicle grenades consistently and not be disappointed or wonder where the hell it's going, and maybe actually be able to not only destroy tanks, but if you're in a squad of Sundances, destroy a tank or a bolt or a MAV almost immediately. And that is a hell of a buff in my book. So if you loved Sundance before this patch and before the game actually felt like it was worthy of launch, I implore you to come back and play Sundance. Not only will you not be disappointed, but you will not be very well liked by the enemy team because slapping them has never been easier. And in saying that, let's move on to the next subject. Stability. Now, granted, I was playing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I never really expect there to be a server overload on Battlefield 2042, but despite that, crashes were just a daily routine for a Battlefield player. Getting into matches that immediately were not only bug-ridden, but FPS destroyers, and you wonder just how it does so bad in this match compared to the previous match. It didn't make sense, but it seems like the overall stability, although not perfect, is a far cry from what it was before update 4.0. I experienced no crashing, zero rubber banding, and in all honesty, it seemed to be a pretty fluid experience throughout the few hours that I played. Which means we're kind of losing excuses for having a bad experience. And that's something that I'm actually glad that I get to say now. And maybe that has something to do with the lower vehicle count. And in bringing that up, I will say that even though it was a small change to how many vehicles can spawn, I gotta say that I didn't seem like I was being overwhelmed by vehicles. And whatever splash damage nerf that they did to whatever, although it's still extremely powerful, and if you're dumb enough to not get completely behind cover, that splash damage is still going to destroy you. It seemed like the vehicles could still make it around the map and do their business without being so much of a goddamn headache because someone in a helicopter is just too good. Now, I haven't got any opinions from anybody that mains vehicles, but I know that the vehicles that were in my matches were still doing extremely good, and even having a player that was in a chopper as soon as the game started and ended off with 0 deaths, still in his helicopter. So I'd imagine the experience in vehicles is still relatively good, which, like I said, surprisingly, is another plus. Now, after 3 breakthrough matches, and then cooling it off by going into a TDM match, I paused the game to get me a drink, came back and sat down, and realized that I had fun. I don't remember cussing at too many people. I don't remember calling people too many names, bitching about too much. And it seemed to me it was because I actually had the opportunity to immerse myself in the game. I had no distractions. I had no interruptions. I had nothing breaking the barrier and pulling me out of the experience because my lobbies were stable, my gunfights were fair, I felt like my accuracy was better than ever, and then on top of that, with the people coming back to try this patch, for some reason also, starting so early in the morning, I experienced an insane amount of team play without even calling for help. I got more armor than I usually get from Angel, and a lot of pushing and a lot of support cover by teammates, not squad mates, not people that I had in a Discord call that was giving me callouts, blueberries, people actually in the game playing it the way that it needed to be played. It's something that I haven't experienced in months on this game. And although it wasn't touching and it wasn't something that will move you to tears, I finally had an experience where I turned off my PC and hopped back into bed. And before I put on some lo-fi music to try to take me a little bit of a cat nap, I thought to myself, I had fun. Now, unfortunately, that's where all the good news ends, because there's still some pretty glaring issues with Battlefield 2042. And we're gonna start with the juiciest one first, and that is the meme, the myth, the legion, Boris. Now, whenever I read the patch notes and I saw the quote-unquote nerfs that they had done to the Boris specialist, I was actually speechless because I thought there is no way that they have not seen these complaints from every big content creator, every small content creator, everybody on the Discord, the Reddit posts, Twitter. There has been an endless amount of people screaming for DICE to fuck off with Boris, and nothing changed. Nothing whatsoever. Now, I will say that I did not experience too many Borises, but I probably equate that to the fact that Boris players probably stay up all night. So I was probably getting on at around the time they were going to bed to sleep until about 2 or 3 in the afternoon because they don't have jobs or lives or girlfriends or any reason to live in the first place. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to experience it again, and that definitely doesn't mean that it's not gonna piss me off to no end to know that they put all of these 400 amazing fixes into the game, only to completely skip over the one that makes you want to slam your head into a marble toilet seat until the seat breaks or your skull breaks. And how they skipped over that will forever be ingrained into my psyche. Now, moving on. New patch, new bugs. And yes, there are new bugs in Battlefield 2042. Now, I will say on the positive side, these are mostly just comical bugs, and though they interrupted my gameplay a little bit and put me in some tricky situations, I will say that they're mostly just dumb and they don't keep you from getting revived, but they are enough for you to be at an objective surrounded by enemies and then immediately just soak through the floor like you phased through it, and you'll just end up down there with the enemy. Hey, what's going on, guys? Just doing my normal human shit of soaking through the fucking floor, and then on top of that, switching weapons through your plus system, you're immediately met with a broken wrist showing your brand new knife. That's something that still hasn't been fixed, and it's gotten me killed, and I don't see how this is even an issue. But moving on, although the new attachments have been revamped and we now have some pretty damn useful attachments, which I'm gonna make a video on later this week, to say it was an overhaul is a little bit of an overstatement, because for about half of the attachments, all they did was just fix the wordings and typos that they just didn't care to fix before the game launched. But the attachments that they did fix and rework are significant. I have a best class setup coming for the K30 either this week or next week, and these 3 attachments will be enough to shred through not only specialists, but the human race, angels and demons, and could very well shoot directly into the soul of the sun. So look out for that video. But guys, all in all, I will say that this patch has been mostly positive, and I gotta admit, whenever I'm wrong, I said it was gonna be dog shit. I said they weren't gonna fix a lot of the main issues, but damn it, they did. So like I said, 25 me, 1 dice. Good going, boys. You finally got one over on us that didn't depress us. But I will say, if you haven't tried the patch 4.0 for Battlefield 2042 because you are just completely disinterested and hurt by what Battlefield did to you, I'll say, dude, give it a shot. I think you'll be surprised, and I think it'll give you a little glimmer of hope. But the main question is this: is it too little, too late? And to give you my honest, non-biased answer, before I tried the patch out for myself, I was convinced that there was no way that this game could turn around. And if you've checked out my catalog, I have been grossly negative about this game. But with the resurgence in players that I saw just trying out the patch, if they were even remotely as surprised and delighted as I was, I think it's going to bring another resurgence of players. And if they get their shit together and steamroll season 1 so we can get some new content, I actually think this game actually has a small glimmer of hope. It'll never be where we want it to be, and it will never be a COD killer, and it will never, ever be the greatest Battlefield ever made. But I think it has the potential to be the game that us content creators and Battlefield lovers can play for the next couple years until we hopefully get the Battlefield that we asked for. But that's just my opinion, and I would love to know yours. So let me know all of that down in the comments section below. So, if you enjoyed the gameplay or you enjoyed my commentary, please leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. That way you get notified every time I post new content, because I'm posting stuff all the time. Thanks for coming around and checking out the channel. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.